Hello and welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast, your Nicolas Cage movie review podcast. I am your host, Derek. Your other host, Ryan, is right here.
That's right, I am right here. And today, I didn't expect to be saying this, but we have a very special episode for you.
Yeah. Happy New Year, everyone. Today, we're actually recording this on January 1st, 2025. First podcast recording of the year.
That's right.
So
That's
happy
not
New
why the
Year.
episode is special, though.
No, no, does it have something to do with the movie that we're talking
The
about?
movie and the content, yes.
Yeah, so we are talking about 1993's Deadfall.
Which I had never heard of. Derek, had you heard of this movie before?
No, I had never heard of it in the slightest. It is kind of interesting because we have hit this particular time frame for Nicolas Cage a lot recently. So, like I said, this is 1993. We just recently did Amos and Andrew. We also did Trapped in Paradise. Those came out in 1993 and 1994. So we've kind of been right here.
But he did a lot of movies in this time period, so
Yeah. We just hit these three basically back to back with Industrial Symphony number one in the middle there, and that was 1990. But three out of four have been this exact time period.
right.
Um, but yeah, I had never heard of this.
Yeah. It's very interesting because I think, we both consider ourselves Nicolas Cage enthusiasts, especially at this point, if we didn't originally.
Yeah.
But I think that, and Derek, you can correct me if you don't feel this way, but I think having watched this movie now, I would tell anybody that says that they're a Nicolas Cage enthusiast that they have to watch this movie.
I think that's fair.
It,
I think that's fair.
I think just going into it, I mean, we're not going to, not necessarily starting the deciphering of the movie yet, but just like out of the gate, I would say this is probably the most batshit insane Nick Cage character in a Nick Cage or in a movie that we've seen thus far, and I'm including Vampire's Kiss in that.
The only one that I think might give him a run, but he has such little screen time,
Let me
would
guess.
be
Let me guess. Sunny.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Acid
Yeah, but
Yellow and
it's not
Sunny.
really comparable because it was like 5 seconds of screen time.
He had like two scenes.
Yeah. This
But
movie, he's in it for like 30 or 40 minutes.
yeah, he's a good supporting character
Right.
in this one rather than like a glorified cameo.
Yeah. So whereas Sunny, you only got, a few minutes.
Yeah.
And it was a crazy ass few minutes, but I still think that this character is more batshit crazy than that character was.
No, I mean I agree with your take on it. I think that if we got those two characters in a room, I think they could give each other a run. But yeah,
I don't know if I would want to watch that or not, if I'm being honest. This was a lot.
this was a lot. It was. Fun fact, he would show up, he just showed up to set dressed up that way, like with the wig and everything. He just decided to do it because he was told that he could just do whatever he wanted. He could just dress however he wanted for the part.
That he could dress however he wanted, or that he could do whatever he
I'm
wanted.
sorry, that he could dress however he
Oh,
wanted
okay.
for the part. Apologies. Yeah. And I guess it's worth noting. So Deadfall, what is it about? When Joe loses his dad in a sting, he contacts his dad's twin, Lou, who has a major sting planned. Lou's helper feels threatened by Joe. Who is conning who? And this was written and directed by Christopher Coppola, Nick's brother. I think
Yes.
that's worth being aware of.
And I think that, a lot of times when we do these reviews and these podcasts, that's pretty much what it is it's just us reviewing a movie. But in this case, I feel like it's more, and we've had these before on our other podcasts, where it's more like a group therapy session afterwards, where you're literally trying to process the thing that you watched. And I don't want to like get everybody's hopes up about like if they watch this movie, they're going to be blown away. It's not really a good movie. I would say, somewhere in the average. We'll rate at the end, but on the lower end of average, probably. But I think that Nicolas Cage's role in this movie makes it a must see for every Cage fan, absolutely. And it'll take you time to process it after you watch this movie.
No, I agree with that. I absolutely do. This is a really unique role for him. I think it's a very significant role for for rounding out who he is as a performer.
Yeah.
Especially during this time period, because during this time period he was doing a lot of kind of serious, bigger stuff. The following year he did Guarding Tess and It Could Happen to You, which we've both covered on the show, which are good. 2 years later he would do Leaving Las Vegas. So I
And
would
win his Oscar, yeah.
Yeah, right. So like this was like when he was coming into like his A-list status.
Yeah, I think this was like towards the very end of like his experimental stage.
Hmm.
Because he's had a few experimental stages where he's done something that seems off the wall for him. Well, at this point, nothing seems off the wall for him. But throughout the years, people have been like, "Well, I never really would have guessed him doing that role." Like, well, I guess John Madden. He's doing the John
That's
Madden
a
movie.
surprising
That's
one.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is still some surprises in there, but I think that this is definitely like when he was experimenting with characters and what he could get away with the studio and things like
Hmm.
that. This was definitely towards the end of that experimental stage in the early 90s, one
Yes.
of his first ones. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And it does seem that when a family member is running the film, he tends to be able to push things farther,
Yeah.
and take more risks or try more things than if somebody else were in control of the film, which is, I mean, that's not like a huge revelation, I'm sure, but still.
And I mean, in this case, it works because I had his performance been less than what it is, I probably wouldn't have or I wouldn't be recommending other fans of his work to watch it. You know what I mean? Like it gave it some replayability
Yes. If
for
this was
Nicolas
like
Cage fans.
your stolen rage type type of film where he's just playing a
Even
criminal
Amos and
guy.
Andrew or any of those
Yeah.
where he was just like a lower, or like not a role where he's standing out really.
Right. Right. Yeah, then I would say yeah, this is a very mediocre movie, and if you want to skip it, you wouldn't be missing anything. So I think you're right. I mean, so it stars Michael Biehn, who he's been in a bunch of stuff, but probably most well known for Terminator. Sarah Trigger, James Coburn plays a couple of roles. Peter Fonda's in it. Charlie Sheen shows up in an interesting scene. Talia Shire shows up in a scene. Um, there's another Coppola, another shows up. So there's a lot of people are in it for what
Yeah.
it's worth.
It kind of reminded me of Matchstick Men. It's that same kind of genre where um the whole movie is about con men,
Hmm.
and you find out at the end that you yourself as the viewing audience have been conned, and like the main character has been conned, or you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
you don't know who to trust. I personally don't find that to be like really exciting. That's not a genre that I'm a fan of. I don't, is that even a genre? There's probably some type of name for that genre,
I mean, it's kind
but
of like the Ocean's 11
yeah,
genre, the
exactly, that
Ocean's
whole thing.
genre. Because I mean, the original Ocean's films, that was the Frank Sinatra era. So,
Right.
the
That's not
concept's been
generally
around.
it's not generally something that I seek out, and I've watched two of them with this Nick Cage show, and maybe maybe there'll be a third because we still have 40 plus movies to go. But um, yeah, I mean it's not really my thing, and this movie kind of was the Matchstick Men before Matchstick Men, so
Yeah, when they're good, I really like them, but they're
Matchstick Men
rarely
was better
good.
than this
Yeah.
in terms of like the twists and everything. I think.
Hmm. Yeah. And so it does depend. I think it's a riskier type of movie. I think it fails more often than it succeeds.
Well, you have to balance a line between like you know uh just not showing everything you need to show to give a surprise to the audience, but also trusting that your audience is smart enough to where they can also maybe pick up on some clues because you want them to feel smart in the end. Like maybe they had an idea this would happen, but you
Hmm.
also want them to be surprised.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a weird balance. I don't really enjoy that balance specifically, but we should probably get into actually reviewing the movie at this point because
Let's do it.
we could talk about it for quite a while. Let me find it in my notes here because I have so many movies in here. Okay. So we only got three title screens with this movie.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah. That's
Usually the
interesting.
90s were notorious for a lot of title scenes. And actually, even in the early 2000s, he started getting a lot more,
Hmm.
the indie movies when he was doing a lot of those. 7, 8 title screens right at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, this one was much more kind of mainstream.
Yeah. And we get our first Biehn voiceover, first of probably 30.
Yeah, so like typically voiceover narrations in movies don't bother me. Blade Runner is obviously very famous for one. It usually doesn't bother me, but the whole time I'm like, who is he talking to? Because it doesn't feel like he's talking to me.
No, he's just talking for the sake of talking and progressing the plot. It's a voiceover that is probably needed to progress the plot, but it's not one that's well thought out to make
Mm,
you really like stay invested in the movie.
that's fair
It
because
does feel like he's talking at you.
I didn't like it at
Yeah,
all. And I like Michael Biehn as an actor, so it was I wanted to like it and I didn't.
right. Yeah. And so we get this, when Derek talked about the plot of the movie, we're getting into this like failed, quote unquote failed grift right in the beginning here. Where it shows him pulling up to the most suspicious looking building ever. I'm just gonna throw it out there for any grifters out there that are looking for like a fake drug meetup to take advantage of. Don't pick the building that like has broken windows and like a fence that's half fallen down and it's like right on a pier. You know, in real life, that's a bad idea because, you know, it looks like a crime building. So chances are there's probably going to be people watching that building. But in this movie, it works for them. They picked the most suspicious building and it works. Um, what we seem to be watching is a drug deal, a
Hmm.
cocaine deal, where Michael Biehn is kind of like the broker,
Yeah,
so
he's
to
the
speak. He's
go-between.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's the yeah the he's brokering the deal between the dealer or the person that has the cocaine and the person that wants to buy it, and it's a clearly like a dealer amount of cocaine. The guy is buying it to resell,
Hmm.
but the guy wants to taste it. He wants to try it. So they Michael Biehn walks over to the dealer. He's like, he wants to try it, and so the guy gives him like a fucking kilo or what. I'm not a drug guy, so I don't
It's a
know, but like
lot.
a
It's a lot.
fucking huge bag, and he brings it over to him, and the guy starts eating it like it's powdered sugar. Like he is just shoving it in his mouth by like the spoonful.
I mean, yeah, it was. I mean, it probably was powdered sugar. But this dude, yeah, this dude was painted as like the most addicted cocaine
Right.
rich person ever. Like,
It's unbelievable. Like he was like sweating, like he had to have this
yeah,
cocaine
he was
to
rubbing
get
his
through
teeth,
this deal.
and doing
Right.
the sniffing, and like it
Licking
was
his
like
lips. It
every
was just,
single thing.
oh yeah. Yeah. Yes, it was something. I
Oh
mean,
man.
I don't want to talk shit on the actor because he was fine, but and maybe that was his direction was to be over the top with it. But yeah, I mean, he was way over the top. They say no, don't get high on your own supply or whatever, but this guy was definitely getting high on his own supply.
Well, my interpretation is that this guy is not going to deal those drugs. Those are for him. And so
Maybe,
he's
but it was a briefcase full of cocaine. I mean,
or
it
maybe he
was
throws parties and stuff, but it didn't I didn't get the vibe that he wanted to sell it. I got the vibe he needed it.
gotcha. I mean, maybe, but it
You
was a
know.
lot of cocaine
It
for
was a
one
lot.
person.
It was a lot of cocaine.
Um, so something goes wrong. I can't remember exactly what goes wrong, but
He sees a wire on the
oh, that's
guy's
right.
cuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's handing Michael Biehn something, and Michael Biehn goes, "He's got a wire," and pulls out a gun and shoots the guy with the cocaine like 3 times or something like
The
that.
guy who has the drugs,
That they're
not
trying to buy.
yeah.
Yeah. And he had the money. He was handing the money over to the guy. So the grift is that everybody in this is part of the grift except the guy with the money, and that they're going to
Mhm.
do this and go, he's got a wire, and then they're going to pretend to shoot people, and the guy is going to run out and they keep the money.
Right.
That's the
And the
grift.
drugs.
And the drugs, yes.
Right.
Um, and so it turns out, dun dun dun, that the gun was mixed up and not loaded with blanks. So he actually shot the dealer, which turns out to be his dad or his pop or whatever he calls him.
He calls him Pop. We find out that it's literally his dad, but early
Yeah.
on that's not necessarily clear.
I mean, I just assumed it was his dad because he calls him Pop. I've never met a person that calls somebody Pop. I'm sure they're out there, but you know, it was at the very least a father figure
Yeah.
to the guy.
But yeah, it's his
Um,
dad.
yeah. So he's struggling with this, like, how did I mix up this gun? Like Michael Biehn was in charge of the guns,
Hmm.
all the guns for this thing. And how did I mess this up? How did I mess this up? And eventually we get to the funeral. And as they're leaving the funeral, a mysterious woman dressed in all black with red hair shows up. And Michael Biehn looks at her, and one second she's there, and the next second she's gone. And we don't get any real explanation for that until like the last 10 minutes of the movie.
Hmm.
Um,
Did you put that together before she shows up the second time?
that it was the girl?
Yeah.
No,
Okay. I didn't either, and I thought maybe I had just missed it, but okay.
no. Um, so then we get more Bean voiceover, and no, I don't have a note for that every time. I was going to, but then it just got happened too
It's
often
too much.
that would have been half of my notes. So I would have had
That's
to buy
funny.
another notebook. Um, so Michael Bean goes to where was this that he went to? Do you know? Like where in the country was this at? Did they say?
Where that starts or where he ends up?
No, where he ends up, like
He,
it looks like a beachfront type of
California.
thing.
Yeah,
Okay, so it's
he goes to
California.
California. Yeah.
Yeah. It's because his dad, as he's laying there dying, says something about get the cake from my brother or something like that.
My brother has the cake.
Yeah, he repeats it like 3 times as he's dying. So this cake must be really important. Um, and so Michael Bihn's character goes to this like resort place, I guess. I don't really, it looked like a boardwalk kind of scenario.
Hmm.
And
It's like a boardwalk market.
as he's going up there, he's like noticing these weird little things happening because he's a grifter. So he knows how to recognize every grift in the world. And so he sees like some guy slip a piece of paper into a cup of coffee. And then the next person that's served to pulls that out and like folds the paper into a newspaper and hands it to the next guy. And this is apparently a super elaborate way of betting on horses. And it's literally like 10 steps we watch.
It seemed like a lot of work for something that feels fairly commonplace,
Right.
like bookies are a thing,
Yeah. And you know, he orders a coffee from this woman that's there that clearly like has a crush on him and
which goes
uh
through the rest of the movie with no
goes through the rest of the
consequences.
movie. Yeah, there's no real payoff or anything. Um, you know, it basically goes through a bunch of people and he essentially follows this to the end and to where he sees the end and he goes up to the guy at the end and asks about his uncle's name and the guy's like why should I tell you or something. Anyway, he ends up getting the guy's name, and then uh this guy shows up who I didn't recognize at first. It took me a minute, but it is Nick Cage, and he's wearing this like crazy ass wig that's very Uncle Rico. If you've seen like Napoleon Dynamite, it's very much like an Uncle Rico wig, and he's wearing these like these big sunglasses. Um,
The
and
problem with
a
movies
mustache,
and a
like a
mustache, yeah.
very thick mustache. It's not like his normal mustache that Nick Cage can grow for movies.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, almost unrecognizable when he's wearing the sunglasses. Honestly,
It was so funny though. At first, because I try not to look into these movies before we watch them if I haven't seen them. So at
right? So
first
I wouldn't be surprised.
I was like, oh my God, he's gonna be Lou. This is gonna be great. He's not Lou. He's not the brother, but he's like the brother's number two, Eddie. And
Right.
when I saw the wig, it's revealed later that it is actually a
In
wig
the
for the
movie, it's
character.
also a wig. Yes.
But that's much later. And so for like half the movie, I'm like, this is the worst looking wig in a movie.
I mean, to be
Like,
fair, it was 93, so
it was
wig
bad.
technology was not as good back then.
I
But
don't know. It
yeah,
was
it was not a good wig. But and I think that's when Nick Cage showed up in that wig, they were like, "How are we going to make the audience think that this isn't just a bad wig?" And then in the moment where they reveal the wig later, we'll talk about that. But it there's no purpose for it to be revealed other than so that the audience knows that it was a bad wig, and that was not on that was for the character, not for the movie.
I mean, maybe it was supposed to help show that it's all a facade,
I
right? Like
guess.
because he's got Diane, but she doesn't sleep with him. He's got the cool car, right? Stuff like that. So he's got like an image he's trying to keep up.
Yeah, but I think that's pretty well obvious. Like in the first few minutes you meet him, that he's just putting on this air.
Mm.
But anyway, he shows up and he's like, pick a card. And he's like, if it's odd, then I'll tell you where this guy is. If it's even, I get to kill you or something like that. I don't
High,
remember what he
high and
said.
low, but
Or
yeah,
high and low, whatever. It was
yeah.
obviously another like scam thing. And then he pulls a Joker. What are the chances? One in 53, I imagine. But yeah, it was 54. Whatever. One in 54. There you go. Derek is the card counting genius, and I'm just the idiot on the
Well, there's
podcast.
52 cards in a standard deck, and then there's two jokers if you have jokers.
There you go. Okay. But anyway, he pulls the Joker, and so Nick Cage's character is very amused by this and
He's very.
ends up taking him to go see um his uncle anyway.
Mhm.
Um and so he goes up and let's see, what do I have? Oh yeah, he meets his uncle, and his uncle's very surprised to meet him.
Mhm.
It's great.
Now the big reveal here, of course, is that it's not just that they're brothers; they're twins. So he's
Right.
played by the same guy. James Coburn plays both brothers,
Yeah.
which was kind of cool. I mean, that was kind of a neat little twist. I like that.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to cover. So when he was looking for the uncle, he found his dad's address book so that he knew where to look. And when I call it a book, I mean it's a book. There's only one address in this whole book. Did you notice that?
No, I
He's like
didn't.
flipping through the book. In the middle of it, there's one address.
Hmm.
There's also a photo in there
Yes.
of the same woman wearing the same outfit that we saw at the funeral. And
Yeah.
it's an old photo. Like it's a photo that's been around a long time. So it's really crazy that this woman would wear the exact same outfit in these two circumstances.
Well, he
Anyway,
saw a ghost, you know.
I mean, I don't know if that's what they want you to believe. I never really thought it was a ghost, but that might have been what they were going for. Also, Nick Cage is extremely sweaty all the time in this role.
So, I mean, I guess they
It's
were in California, but yeah,
they were in California, but not everybody else is that sweaty. I think it just kind of lends itself to like that greaseball stereotype that he was kind of
yeah.
playing for, which
Hmm.
so I appreciated that. It was like a small detail. Um, but when he goes to meet his uncle, we get dry swallowing. Did you notice that? It was more like chewing. He like chewed up the pill, but I still counted it. There
You
was
wanted to
no
count it?
water. Yeah, there's no water, no nothing. Um, and my next note is Nick thumbs up because I think he does a really weird thumbs up in the scene, and it's just like making a weird face while he's doing it. Basically, I don't even know how to really describe Nick in this role. He is, I don't know if it's the script or like what it is, but this
Okay.
character is just so absurd. Every line he says is ridiculous, so over the top. Like,
Hmm.
how would you describe this character, Derek, if you were describing it to a Nick Cage fan?
Um, he is an eccentric, cocky con man. I like Greaseball. Greaseball was good. I think that really works well. That's a good descriptor for it. And it's an extremely cagey character, right? But everything about him is eccentric. He has all these little affectations to him, right? He's got the weird voice going on. He's got
His
all the weird
vocabulary
mannerisms.
is
Yeah,
weird. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. It's really like how do I make? It's almost like his approach was how do I make this dude as weird as possible? How
right.
do I make him stand out as uniquely as possible in this movie?
And what's crazy about that is no other character in this movie is that abnormal, really.
No,
They're all
everybody else is like a totally straight character.
yes, and I think that's what made his role seem even more absurd. Is it was like you took Daffy Duck and put him into Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. You know what I
My
mean? Like
God.
it's just a complete counter to what the movie's tone was.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
To great success. I mean, for a Nick Cage fan, when this movie came out, I cannot imagine it was successful. But I would say if you're a Nick Cage fan, then it for great success having all these like straight men type characters surrounding this completely absurd character. And when I say completely absurd, I'm that's underselling it. I cannot say enough about how ridiculous this character is. And one
Uh,
thing we talked about this a little bit, but what I don't understand is how in this internet age that we live in, where everybody has access to all these things at their fingertips, movies, whatever, Vampire's Kiss has become the meme face for Nick Cage.
mhm.
But no one, if I mentioned Deadfall to anybody, even like fairly hardcore Nick Cage fans, they would have no clue what this movie was. And it rivals Vampire's Kiss in terms of the way he utilized his face and his features.
I mean, I think that's for a couple of reasons. First, he's not the lead in this, and so he's not in it anywhere near as much as he's in something like Vampire's Kiss. And I do think the average movie viewer cares about that kind of thing. And there's no cult following. Some movies are lucky enough to get that cult following, and Vampire's Kiss got that.
But
And
this movie should have it, I think, because look at the cast. I
I
mean,
think it's because to what you said earlier, where everybody else is pretty normal and it's just him who's outrageous. And so the story doesn't really stand well on its own. You just
but I
kind
think
of
that's what
enjoy the
adds
cage of it.
I think for me that adds to the appeal though,
Yeah,
because you have these two the like this dichotomy between these two types of things that are happening at the same time. It's just so weird.
it is.
Because
It is totally weird.
there's a lot of cult movies out there that are worse than this movie,
100%.
objectively. So
100%.
I think that because of like the how to counteract how weird he is, everybody else is super straight. I think that all of those things would play in. I mean, obviously, I can't make a movie a cult movie, but this one, I don't understand how it's flown under the radar, honestly.
It is interesting because it's not like we've watched some movies that are fairly hard to find,
Yes.
right?
And this one's not hard to
This is
find.
not. It's not hard to find. Now, there's a couple other movies with the same title, and so that makes searching. You know, you have to be careful, but it's out there. I mean, we didn't have to pay for it. It was just on Prime, I
Prime.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to watch it on Prime. So, you know, I
And you
don't
know what's
know.
crazy is before we even hit the wheel to select this movie, it was showing up on my Google Chrome TV or whatever with my
Oh,
Chromecast as a
interesting.
recommended movie
Yeah,
for me. So I mean, it's obviously if it thinks you're a Nick Cage fan, it's recommending this movie to you. But yeah, it
that's
still
interesting.
for some reason hasn't caught on.
I mean,
I
it
don't.
was panned immediately. Apparently, a lot of critics went to calling it Dreadfall.
Wow.
And Christopher Coppola was blacklisted for a while over how terrible the movie was. It was considered bad,
I mean, I think it is
you know?
bad. I
Yeah,
don't disagree with that, but I think that there's a, like I said, there's a lot of really bad movies out there that have attained a cult status just because of how weird or off the wall something about the movie is.
it is an interesting point. I hadn't really thought too much about it, but you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. And it is one of those things where if someone's looking for Nicolas Cage recommendations, this is
This
going to
is a
get
great one.
recommended way above a
100%.
bunch of other stuff that we've watched.
For if they're asking us for that, then yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. If I know that they're a fan of just like his specific style that he brings to a movie, then 100% from here on out, I'm recommending this movie as one of probably my top five for
interesting.
them to watch because it's just it's a complete opposite to something like Pig. I thought when we started this, we'd have like Pig at 20 for quality and zero
Yeah.
for caginess, and then Vampire's Kiss at like 3 for quality and 20 for caginess. But this
Hmm.
movie is right up there with Vampire's Kiss if you're a caginess movie fan. So we haven't rated it yet, and to be honest, I haven't finalized what my rating is going to be in my head yet. So I just know that it's going to be high up there. So yeah, for me, it's a very high rating
Totally.
for that. Anyway, getting back into it. Weird accent. I said he had a weird accent, so that is a bingo square for us, along
Yes,
with
yes.
the dry swallowing and a couple other things. More Biehn voiceover.
It's
And then
just not good.
so the uncle, his plan is to send Michael Bihn's character Joe out with Eddie, who is Nick Cage's character, for a night on the town.
Right.
Well, I don't know if it was implied or if Eddie just this is what he does for fun, but his plan is to go out and do a scam.
Right. To kind of test
Yeah,
Joe a
yeah,
bit.
he wants to see where he's at.
it was unclear to me as well whether that was what Lou intended or not. But I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So the scam is that they go into this bar, and I think we've seen this in another Nick Cage, maybe Matchstick Men, where the person goes into a bar or some type of place and loses something. It's pretty common in these kind of like grifter movies. I know they did this in Zombieland also, where they lost a ring
Hmm.
and they were like, "Oh, if you find it, call me and I'll give you all this money." And then they immediately have somebody bring in the ring. In this movie, it was a neck or a bracelet or
It
something.
was a
In
bracelet, yeah.
Zombieland, it was a ring. But the person
And in
walks in with
Matchstick
it.
Men, it was a lottery ticket.
It was a lottery ticket, yeah. And they say, "Oh, I'll give you $300 for that," because they know the person is going to give them 500 to return it.
Hmm.
And so then the person just pockets the money and they never pay them the 500. So then they just profit, the money. But it's a pretty common scam for these movies that I hadn't even really thought about it until we started discussing it here, but it's very common. Um,
Yep.
but that's the whole scam. And my next note, I think, is when they're trying to like win over the bartender at this bar before losing the bracelet. Um,
Yeah.
Eddie goes, "Mommy, mommy, we'll go home soon, mommy."
Yeah, he says that. He says mommy a lot.
He calls this woman that he's with mommy
A lot.
a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if like his backstory is that he has major like parent issues, but it sure seems like something that he should get checked out by a professional.
I don't think he has much backstory, buddy.
Well, I like to think that Nick doesn't just like play a character
Oh, that he
the way the
created.
direction, yeah, like in his mind this
Gotcha.
character had some sort of backstory. I also can't imagine that line, along with a lot of his other lines, was in the script.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting one, right? Where maybe if this was our full-time job, maybe I'd like hunt down a digital copy of the script or whatever and like kind of look at the shooting draft. But yeah, it's a fair point.
It's a weird, I don't think a writer would just put that line in the movie, but I could be wrong. I could
I
be
mean,
wrong.
having it be that it's Christopher Coppola, it's Nick's brother, he was, basically blacklisted for this movie. I wouldn't I don't have a hard time believing that it was in there, but I'm also fine believing that Nick came up with it.
Right. A
So
lot of his character's lines in this felt like they were improvised by him. So they are successful with the scam, and so they immediately go to a strip club, and we get nudity, which is another square on our bingo card. There's a lot of boobs in this movie.
there's
I mean, it
a
was an
lot.
early 90s, or it was a 90s R-rated movie. We've covered that before, that in the 90s, if you had an R-rated movie, you put boobs in it. That was just,
Because you're already there.
yeah, and the movies seem to be like catered to men, a lot of these movies. Um,
Yeah. Hmm.
so I don't know what it is, but something about 80s and 90s movies that were rated R, there was just usually a lot of breasts. Um,
I think it was an easy thing to throw in.
Here's another choice that Nick Cage made.
It's another choice.
You know which one am I about to say?
I don't. I don't.
He gets a beer at the strip club.
Hmm.
You still don't know where I'm going?
No, I don't.
Okay, so a normal person when they drink a bottle, usually they have like their lip on the upper part of the bottle and their lower lip like underneath, and so the liquid kind of goes in. He puts his whole mouth
I don't think I know.
around. Did you not notice this?
I
Oh,
mean,
dude, it was when I saw him do it, I was like, there's no way
there's a
this was
lot,
his character choice.
but there's so much going on in this scene. I was a little distracted.
But he does it like six
I
times.
did, it's only in that strip club. I did
Yeah.
not
He
notice.
literally puts his whole mouth around the neck of the bottle, and it's essentially pouring the liquid straight into his mouth with like
Oh
no
my
no
God.
like lip control like a normal person would have when they're drinking. It
I
was, and I never thought these were things that I would say on this podcast, like describing how a normal person drinks out of a bottle, like a bottle of beer or water or root beer or whatever. But yeah, it was such a weird, subtle choice that really established how like just off the handle this guy is.
That's so funny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So my note was drinks beer by putting his whole mouth around opening. And yeah, that covers our drinks slash does drugs,
Mm-hmm.
which is a square in our bingo card also.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, so I can't remember. Is this when he breaks into his uncle's office after the strip club? I think it is. My next note is about there's a photo with two guys and the girl from the funeral.
Well, yeah, but didn't he have to talk to Baby?
Oh yeah, that was at the strip club. So yeah, I guess we
Right.
should cover that, even though it
Because
doesn't really matter in the end. But
well, it comes back a little bit because so basically this big dude who's got lots of people around him, men, women, he's in the strip club, owes a lot of money to Lou. Ends up being only $1,500, which doesn't seem like as much money as they were trying to make it.
93 it probably was,
I
but
guess. I mean, but and so Eddie wants Joe to take care of it.
yeah, and in
And
his mind, there's no way this is going to
right.
happen. They've tried to get the money a bunch of times and been unsuccessful.
And so I think he's hoping that Joe gets like beat up or
He
something,
said that. He
you know?
said to Diane that he's going to get his ass beat or something
Yeah.
like that. So it's definitely implied.
But then the next thing we know, Eddie's in the car with Diane, and we see Joe come out of the place with Baby and a bunch of other dudes, and they're like handshaking and hugging and all this other stuff. And Joe goes in the car and he's got the cash, and Eddie can't believe it.
And Eddie wants to take the cash from him to give it to the uncle himself.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, no, I think I'll hang on to it. And so then after that, he goes and breaks into his uncle's office to try and find more information about this cake or whatever it is. And he finds the full version of that photo that his father had. And it was, I know they didn't have Photoshop back then, but it was one of the like most poor. We've seen a lot of poorly edited photos in Nick Cage movies throughout this, but this one was really poorly made.
I give this one a little bit of slack because it's the same guy twice. It's not three different actors.
I
So like
guess,
to,
but
to
it's
your
still
point, like
really bad.
it wasn't good, but I just give them a little bit of extra credit because it's a split screen type situation, and I have a little bit of extra bandwidth for that.
Fair
You
enough.
know,
But
versus
it's
if you have three actors that you just can't for some reason get into a room together and you have to
just take a
Photoshop them
photo.
together, right?
Yeah.
That I'm like, that I don't have as much leeway for, you know.
Fair enough. Basically, the reveal here is that the ripped part of the photo that his dad had was ripping the other brother, the twin brother, his uncle, out of the picture, and that they were both with this woman who was his mother, who appears to be the same woman that appeared at the funeral wearing the exact same dress. Um, but yeah, poor. That was a poorly edited photo. But yeah, I guess it gets a little bit of a pass. Um, so he gets back to his hotel room, and Diane, who was the woman that they've been kind of doing the scam with,
She's
um,
Eddie's girl,
Eddie's girl, but
supposedly.
they don't fuck apparently.
We
She
find
brings that
out,
up during this, but um,
and he's
they
glad to hear that. Joe
yeah, he
said.
seems very thrilled. But she did not come to the strip club with him, so I'm guessing that she like has been sitting in this apartment for 4 hours
Give or take.
waiting. Oh no, because I guess she
Oh, she
was
was in the
waiting
car.
out of the car. So was she
Yeah,
just out in the car the whole time they were in
must
the
have
strip
been.
club?
Must have been.
She just has nothing better to do?
I mean, again, right? It's 1993. She's got no cell phone. There's no Uber or anything, right?
I
So I
guess.
guess what do you do? I mean, maybe there weren't like a lot of cabs in that part of town. I don't know.
Maybe. But she shows up at his apartment and she's trying to seduce him,
Hmm.
basically. But he thinks it's a grift because
Right.
he's a grifter and everybody around is grifting and they just grifted together not even, a day ago.
Hot.
So he calls her out on the grift and like throws her onto the bed, not like in a sexual way, just like to get her off of him because she's like
Hmm.
grabbing his junk and like rubbing up on him and everything else, and he just like pushes her onto the bed and says, "I know you're just trying to grift me or whatever," and then immediately has sex with her anyway. It's like, man, like are you refusing
Uh,
at one time and then giving in?
I guess he's like, well, what do I have to lose?
I guess. And there was woman on top sex during this sex scene where they
Oh,
show about four different
I
positions.
guess I missed that she got on top at some point. Okay.
Oh, she was on top.
I
Yeah.
missed that.
They show literally like four different positions. It was ridiculous. But yeah, that's one of the squares on our bingo card. That's the only reason why I brought it up.
Yeah.
Um, so we get to go apparently it's Uncle Lou's birthday.
Yay.
And so he goes to this birthday party. I put party in quotes because it's literally just him, Uncle Lou, and Uncle Lou's wife. That's like a third of his
Yeah.
age,
I don't, yeah, I don't know. What was her name? Blanche?
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Gigi Rice is the actor. She was born in 1965. So she's actually 3 years younger than Nick, for perspective there, where James Coburn was born in 1928.
Yeah. So not
So,
really a third of his age, but it was,
but
a
younger, a
significant 30
little bit
year age
younger.
difference. Yeah, and she was great. She was like this over the
Yeah,
top
she
kind of
was fun.
valley, chick. I don't know. She was interesting. Um, See, at this point, I hadn't put together that they were horse racing. Like that was what the whole thing was. Maybe I missed when I was writing a note or something. I missed
Mhm.
something saying what it was. And so I was really confused as to why she brought out a cake that had two toy horses on it.
Yeah, I had just made the assumption because like there's that scene in Lou's office where Lou gets the phone call and he's like putting down the bet and he says good luck and everything. And I was like, that's all I could think of,
Fair enough.
you know? So, but I don't think they were very clear about it.
Yeah. So they do this birthday party, and I think that basically the purpose of this scene was for Michael Bihn's character to say that he would do more. He was willing to do more for his uncle,
Hmm.
and he gave him the $1,500
Yeah.
as a birthday present or whatever. Um, and then so in the next scene, we have Eddie and Uncle Lou, and I just have this quote from Eddie where he said he's cool enough to get the baby to burp up $1,500, which I don't know why that line made me laugh, but it just the thought because the baby is a like very large black man,
Yeah. Yeah. He is definitely not
not a baby
not a baby.
in the traditional sense of the word, but just him using burp up, which is a term that people would say about babies for this fully grown black man, was hilarious. I don't know why that made me laugh. And then my next one is another quote from him where he just screams "Hi fucking yeah,"
Hi, fucking yeah.
and then he just yells "fuck" really loud.
Yeah, if you go to IMDb and you look and you scroll down to where the quotes are, the one that's there is just Eddie and then the word fuck with like 30 U's in the
Yeah,
middle
yeah.
is the first quote. It's so funny. Ugh.
And so my next note is Eddie attacked.
Yeah. So Eddie goes back to the strip club. And this is where we find out that
Oh yeah, yeah,
Joe lied. So, because Eddie couldn't believe because Baby's there, and Eddie couldn't believe that he gave him the money, and Baby's like, I didn't give him any money. He's like, he just asked me to like go out
come
there.
out and hug him. Yeah,
Yeah, and I was like,
whatever.
sure, man. So then we're like, oh, okay. So Joe might maybe he's not as good as we've been led to believe. Maybe he's the what's the whatever narrator.
Unreliable narrator.
Thank you, unreliable narrator. But anyway, there's this guy at the bar though, who's we've kind of seen glimpses of throughout the movie. He's just kind of staking things out. Suspicious dude follows Eddie out into the alley,
Yeah,
and yeah, just straight up attacks the dude in the alley and like puts a piano wire around his neck.
yeah. It's trying to kill him,
Yeah,
but Eddie survives.
yeah, he's got a blade in his boot and stabs the dude and
Yeah, kills him.
bashes the dude's head in with the car door.
Right, right, right,
So
right. Which is
we
a
got melee
classic
weapon.
move.
He uses
Yes,
a melee weapon here with the
a
knife.
knife is clearly a melee weapon, and a door could also be considered a melee weapon.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, we also get. I think this is the scene where we get what I consider casual discrimination
Yeah.
with the R word.
I was gonna ask because I consider it
I
discrimination.
think I think the last time we had this discussion, it was a different. I think it depends on the circumstances of this word because last time we had it was Entrapped in Paradise,
Hmm.
and in that term or in that capacity in that movie, that word they were using to describe a person with a mental retardation,
Hmm.
and so I don't think. I think that it's not really a slur in that context.
They were being literal.
They were being very literal with the word, whereas In this one, it's definitely used more like a discriminatory slur.
It's meant as an insult.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree with you. I was a little on the fence, but
Yeah, I think
I
it depends
agree.
on the context. I think in this one, the context, we both agree on that it would be considered more of a discriminatory method.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, then Eddie decides to go after Lou because I think he believes that this guy was sent by Lou. Was that established?
No, that's all very unclear
Yeah,
to
that's what I
me.
thought. Who sent this guy or whatever. But
Yeah,
the next scene we find out that from Diane, I guess that Eddie is going after Lou.
yeah. How does that come to be?
I don't know. It's
Oh, Eddie
literally.
Eddie goes back to his house and he's got blood on him and everything.
Oh,
He's all
that's right.
freaked out, and Diane's like laying very sexily in
In
bed
like
with like a nightgown.
negligee.
Yeah, right. And all that. And he's very upset. He's being very aggressive about it. And he's like he I don't know, he's getting very paranoid. Right. Clearly he's had this like near death experience. Maybe this hasn't happened to him very often. He's clearly like struggling with it. And she pulls a gun on him, a little pistol, and gets him out of the house. And so he's like a raving lunatic at this point
Yeah. And so Michael Biehn goes back into his apartment and she pulls a gun.
on
No,
him.
is that when she pulls a gun on him? That's later, I think.
Is it later? It
Yeah,
might be
because
later,
she goes
but
to his apartment and he opens the door and she's like, "Oh, he's Eddie's going
oh,
after
right.
Lou. Eddie's going
Yeah.
after Lou." And he says, "Okay, stay here."
Hmm.
And so he goes after
After Eddie
Eddie. And so there's like this big he's Eddie gets Lou and like ties him to a chair
in this little market that's outside
and brings
Lou's
him, yeah, to like
office.
this market, the market that he was watching all the like bet thing happening earlier. Um
It's kind of a weird place, but
Apparently Eddie is deciding to like cook something because the grease is on, the fryer is on.
I mean, it was very unclear to me what his goal was because
What the
he's
plan
already
was.
right because he's
Yeah,
already got Lou. Lou's tied up and gagged in the chair. If you wanted Lou dead, it would have
just
been
kill him.
very easy to shoot him at that point or
Right.
stab him or something. I don't know. Was he going to torture him with the grease?
I don't know. I don't know. But in any case, Michael Bihn's character shows up and like dives over the side and they fight and uh while they're fighting, Michael Biehn pulls off his wig so it's revealed that he's bald,
Yeah,
which
it was
is
very Hook. Do you remember in Hook when
yes.
it was?
And then he pushes his head into the fry, his face into the fryer.
Yeah, gnarly.
And
Bad way to go.
yeah, he starts untying his uncle, but it shows like maybe okay, you'll have to correct me if you didn't feel this way. I didn't know for sure where this was going, but
Okay.
they went through the effort of making the prosthetics for Nick Cage's face, showing how burned and everything he was.
Hmm.
And when Joe, Michael Bihn's character, is untying Uncle Lou, you can still see Nick Cage's breathing and moving a bit.
Hmm.
So in the next scene, they have him wrapped up in like a sheet and they throw him into a hole, but they don't bury him, nothing like that. Did you have any inkling that he might come back and wasn't dead?
Okay. So the short of it is no,
Okay,
because what they threw him down was kind of like almost like an oil derrick. It would have been hundreds of feet.
gotcha.
So if he wasn't dead, he definitely was by the time he landed. I think when we're watching him on the ground with his face all jacked up, I think we're supposed to watch him like stop breathing in that moment, like he's struggling and then it stops.
Hmm.
But it cut away really quick. But here's what's really weird. It's the last we see of Eddie in this movie.
Yeah.
It is not the last of Eddie. Nicholas Nicolas Cage reprises this role again in the 2017 movie Arsenal, which we have not watched yet on the show. And I don't know enough about the movie yet to know when it takes place.
This is real?
This is, I swear, this is real. The movie is called Arsenal 2017. Um, a Southern businessman attempts to rescue his kidnapped mobster brother, and he's right there. He's top billing as Eddie King. John Cusack is in it. This is a legitimate movie,
I feel
and
like I don't believe you.
I swear. Look, Christopher Coppola is in it. Christopher Coppola has a role in this movie. He's lower down on the billing, so I don't know how much he's in it. But this is a legitimate movie, man. I swear.
Okay, well that blows me away because I don't know. I don't really know. I thought we were done with Eddie. I cannot imagine in a million years that Eddie is as unhinged in that movie as he is in this movie.
I don't know. Like I know we have our wheel and everything, but there's a small part of me that just wants to watch Arsenal next just to see what
I
happens.
don't want to do that. I want it to come up naturally, but I understand the temptation.
It is tempting.
But I cannot imagine a movie that came out in 2017 if it had a Nick Cage performance that was anything like this movie that it would have flown under the radar. There's no way.
I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know. It's very strange. His brother Christopher Coppola is in it and plays his brother in the movie. Um, I mean, yeah, it's
It's
direct.
definitely so going I went to Arsenal to look at some of the pictures from it. It's not there's similarities, but like he has a prosthetic nose in Arsenal.
Maybe he survives, but his face was all screwed up.
No, because there's like no scars anywhere else.
But maybe he
Like
got his whole face redone. He had
and he got a
face-off
bigger
surgery. He
nose.
got face-off surgery.
He was like, "Please give me a bigger nose
I don't
than
know,
like a
man.
normal
I
human."
don't know.
I'm just saying, like I don't know either. That blows me away. I had no idea. Okay, and sorry, I had to take a second because that was not something that I could possibly believe. Anyway, I guess we'll get to that movie at some point. Where was I at? Okay, yes. So after this happens, after Uncle Lou is saved by Michael Biehn, um, he reveals that he's working on this grift, and he wants uh Michael Biehn's character to take the place that Eddie was going to do.
Because
Basically,
Eddie was going to be the
Eddie was a
in-between.
crucial part.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now he's dead.
He brings in the mark.
And so yeah, that he's in his office with him, and his uncle opens the his safe in the wall behind a painting. Nobody would have ever guessed that. And
It's kind of the
he
place,
pulls
isn't
out the
it?
cake.
I want a safe in a wall behind a painting. That's what I want.
I mean, you got a lot of places for it, so you could do it.
I could.
But he pulls out the cake,
Yeah,
and the
it's actually
cake
it's a little cake.
it's a little like sculpted cake with a wedding ring in it, or like an engagement ring in
I
it.
couldn't believe it when it was literally a little cake. I was a little mind blown.
But here's the thing: it has nothing to do with the ending of this movie.
Not even a little bit.
There's like it's a big plot point, right? Because the dad like sets it up to be you have to find the cake. You have to find the cake. And he finds the cake. The only relevance that it has to this to the relevance to the plot is that he now knows that his uncle or his dad's twin brother, his uncle, was going to propose to
Hmm.
his mother. And
And
that is what separated the two of them. But that really doesn't matter.
I think it's supposed to. I think the goal is that it's supposed to help distract Joe, right? Because we don't know this yet as the viewers that Joe is being conned this entire time, right? We think Joe's the one doing the conning. And so I think this was supposed to keep him distracted, keep him focused on other things so he wouldn't notice he's being conned. I think.
Maybe. I don't know. It didn't really have any relevance to the plot in my mind. It was just like this weird extra thing that they had to do.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that was disappointment.
And his
But
uncle seems like obviously he's a criminal and everything, but he seems to care about Joe and want to like create a relationship with him legitimately,
yeah.
you know.
And so the grift is grift of well, it's not grift of, but it's involved with Charlie Sheen's character, who is a pool shark.
So it's billiards, which I guess I didn't know what billiards was.
Yeah, because my next note was weird pool game with no pockets.
Yeah. I don't know.
The only way, so this is coming from somebody. Listen, neither of us. He just admitted he doesn't know what billiards is.
Nope.
I have no idea. So here's what I think billiards is based on this movie. Okay, and I may
Okay.
be way off. I think the point of billiards is you have three balls. You have the white ball, the red ball, and the yellow ball.
Okay.
The point of billiards is to make the white ball touch the red ball and the yellow ball without making the red ball and yellow ball touch each other, or without just touching one of the two. I
Interesting.
think that's what I
Okay.
got from this movie.
That's good. I didn't even get that much. So that's really
I was really analyzing it because I was like, I've never played pool with no pockets
that's very
and
interesting.
only three balls.
Let's see.
We'll see how
Yeah,
far off I am.
I'm trying to find like a good. I guess the problem is, yeah, three balls, again, no pockets. The other principal games, let's see, billiards. So is that English billiards, French billiards, Ca- carom or French billiards okay. So that's right. And then okay, so in play, the object is to stroke the cue ball so that it hits the two object balls in
Nailed it.
succession, scoring a carom or billiard, which counts as 1 point.
Nailed it.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
and I
think I
think the
think you were
movie
right.
actually did a really good job of explaining that without explaining it, just by showing the shots
Very
that were
good.
getting them points. I mean, I appreciate it. I wish I could take credit for it, but I don't think I think the movie did a good job of explaining what it is without having to like hand feed it,
Yeah.
force it down our throats. Anyway,
It was a cool scene though. Like Charlie Sheen, I used to be a pretty big fan of
pre
back in the
Tiger
day.
Blood or post Tiger Blood?
The hot shots era,
Right, right,
and
right.
things like that. So I thought this was a kind of a cool role for him, playing this very cool-headed, slick guy, and obviously he's very good at this. And I liked his jacket. It reminded me a bit of Sympathy for the Devil.
My girlfriend was watching this movie with me, and she said I should get you that jacket.
It's a nice jacket.
It is a nice jacket.
Yeah.
And I know earlier that I said that Nick Cage was the most outlandish thing in this movie. When I said that, that's with a single exception of another character that's in it for a very brief time. Do you know the character I'm getting to? I'm assuming
I assume that it's Crab Hand
Doctor Evil.
Diamond Guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So when when he loses this billiard match or whatever, it says he can't pay, and he offers this guy this watch. Apparently, that was the code for these guys to take him back to the Diamond Guy because the guy wanted to inspect the watch
Hmm.
to see if it was worth anything. So he gets taken back. Keep in mind, this is just like a pool bar,
Right.
right? Or a billiards bar. He gets taken back to a hidden back room with a guy that's wearing a Dr. Evil lab coat and has what can only be described as a giant pair of gold scissors for a hand,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
who is apparently a diamond and jewelry expert. And he has multiple henchmen that work for him and that are also in this room.
One that constantly reaches for his gun but doesn't do anything. It was very distracting.
Yes. And this guy is constantly like flexing his scissor hand.
Hmm.
And so the grift is actually of this guy. They say they have access to a bunch of diamonds and they give him like one to look at, I think, and he's like very interested. And they're going to offer him $5 million worth of diamonds for $2 million, essentially, that they're too hot for him for them to sell the like normal means. So he has to sell it to this underground like fence type guy.
I mean, like that sounds suspicious to me. Wouldn't that sound suspicious to a career criminal?
Apparently not. But after they decide on the deal that they're going to do it, the guy is like, come shake on it. And he holds out his scissor hand. And Michael Biehn just shakes his scissor hand. And the guy's like, interesting. How did you know I would not cut you? And I don't even remember Michael Bihn's response, but it was just
It's like I
such a
did.
weird. Yeah, I didn't. I think you're right. I think that was
Yeah.
what his response. It was just such a weird. Why does this guy need a scissor hand?
Well, this guy's a weird guy. So this is Angus Scrim, who sounds like a Harry Potter character, but he's been in film, I mean, forever. He died back in 2016, but he was in like all the Phantasm movies, for example. He did a lot of really strange movies. John dies at the end. It's kind of just weird stuff. Uh, just a weird guy. So I wouldn't be surprised if he like was part of that decision making process.
Man, I don't know.
Because
But this is just another point in the column for me. Like, why has this not become a cult movie?
it is weird, right? Like when you really break it down and you include the cast, it is strange that not more people know about this.
Yeah. I mean, I would think that this movie is not as good as Mandy, but it is as weird as Mandy, I would say, in terms of like some of the character choices. The thing about Mandy was, going into that, that's going to be a weird, trippy, like
Mm-hmm.
LSD movie. This movie, you don't go into it knowing that there's going to be a guy with scissor hands that's a jewel thief or a
Right.
jewel, and another guy that wears a wig and talks about his mother and just is like super over the top all the time. So I think that that's the difference here is that it's just whereas Mandy you expect it and you get those over the top characters. In this movie you don't expect it and you get those over the top characters anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So once they make the deal, then the actual like con planning session happens where they are like it's like a round table. It's like goes around the table. It's kind of like a Michael Bay style
It kind of is.
planning
It's funny.
session.
Yeah.
But then the deal goes wrong. Who could have guessed? And the mysterious woman shows up again.
Well, because so yeah, things all go wrong. His Joe's uncle gets shot by the other bad guys, so not
For
even
real.
Joe
Yeah,
for
like
real. So he's really dead. And there's this big shootout happening. So Joe runs with the money, and I don't think he has the diamonds, and so I think he's just running with the money. He ends up with a carousel somewhere.
yeah, in a warehouse with like a carousel in it for some reason.
Yeah, I thought maybe it was a mall or something. I don't know, but yeah, he's in a room with a carousel, and
And
there's Diane.
I think he chased this woman into this room where the
Well, he does
carousel
see her
is.
at some point while he's running. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Which
so she's wearing the same dress again and the wig.
again, and just happened to be where they needed her to be at the right moment in time, conveniently.
Yeah. And it's revealed that this woman has been Diane this whole time, trying to dress up like the mother for some reason.
Which, like, the whole time, I'm like, obviously, there's going to be some twist here. I just couldn't figure out what it was.
Well,
And
that
so,
wasn't the twist. The twist was
well,
that his dad was never really dead
yeah,
and that the whole thing was a grift.
right. But I knew she was in, like, there was something she was in on, you
Yeah.
know, but I couldn't put my finger on it. But yeah,
Yes. So at this point, yeah, his dad shows up trying to get his money, and he reveals that this was the grift the whole time. Was and they couldn't let Joe in on it because it would have ruined it. And yeah, this was the grift to end all grifts, and they can. I feel like I've used that word way too many times during this podcast. The con to end all cons, so to speak, and that they made so much money on this con that they'll be fine for a long time. Uh, and yeah, Diane was the one dressed as the mom. They have this kind of merry-go-round confrontation, where the at some point, if I remember right, they literally start up the merry-go-round,
yeah, Joe starts it up for some reason.
and while his dad is on the merry-go-round,
Hmm.
I think.
Yeah. And then he opens the briefcase with all the money, and all the money falls onto the floor of the
Yeah,
carousel. And
and
then he
Michael
leaves.
Biehn walks away,
Yeah.
and we get another voiceover.
Because he claims, like, his dad's all like, oh, it was all for you and for us and for, and yada, yada, yada. But it's like, I mean, yeah, there's all this, like, you're supposed to, like, trust the people you're doing the grift with. But if they're doing another grift on a grift, then it's okay. And I mean,
Apparently,
like, whatever.
yeah, this was not one of the ones that felt really smart at the end. Like you do want the audience to be surprised, but you don't want them to feel dumb because this is a thing you've mentioned before where you have a problem with you're not fooling the audience if you just don't give them information that they would need to
Right.
figure it out themselves.
Yeah.
You're just like cheating.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you brought that up, not necessarily on this podcast. I don't think you brought it up, but on our Screen Heroes podcast, you brought it up.
Well, because one of my favorite examples is the Saw movies. I think it's 4 and 5. I could be misremembering that, but there's two Saw movies that literally take place at the same time. And the big twist reveal in the second one is that they meet up at the end, and it's supposed to be this massive big twist reveal. And it's just like, well, but you just had us in different rooms the
Yeah,
whole time with no light of day or calendars or anything. How could we possibly have known that
right,
that was happening? That's not clever.
right.
This is like that. There's nothing clever to this. You're telling me that, like, Michael didn't realize his dad was still breathing,
Right.
or like all these other guys. Like there's so many people in on the con that like nobody slipped up, and everything with his uncle went so perfectly.
Yeah.
Like, so how is this supposed to work out if Eddie doesn't die?
Right.
Or how is this supposed to work out if Crab Claw Man's guy doesn't shoot first, right? Or how does this work out if Joe goes a different direction during the gunfight? Like, so much of this is predicated on it just happening the way they needed it to happen, that it
Yeah.
just kind of falls apart. That's not clever, that's lucky.
Right. That's true. Okay, so usually on these we go through some reviews
Let's
of
do
the
it.
movie.
Let's
Do you
do
want
it.
to start out with the single? Oh, there's two 10 out of 10 reviews, and
Let's
then
start
there's
there. Let's see what
six 1 out of 10 reviews.
perfect.
So
That sounds right.
this is a 10 out of 10 review. It says Biehn, Cage, Sheen, Coburn, why does this not work? This is keep in mind that's the title for a 10 out of 10 review.
Okay.
Um, the answer is that this film just looks so cheap. It's tacky. The finale shootouts are awful, accompanied by some very bad extras. Biehn was perfectly suitable in the role. It's a shame that he had such a bad character with bad dialogue. Nicolas Cage is terrible as Eddie. He is nearly inaudible. James Coburn is great and has great chemistry with Michael Biehn. The ever reliable Charlie Sheen is once again reunited with Biehn. The pair had built up a good rapport filming Navy SEALs. The film was just really bad, and I was so disappointed. This is a 10 out of
That's
10.
a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, review.
Okay.
The other 10 out of 10 review, does one man's performance make up for a bad movie? Yes, exclamation point. When that man is Nicolas Cage. I've seen this film many
Yes.
times and it is terrible. I mean, the story is not very original and Bean is incredibly boring. That man has no personality at all. But from Cage's first appearance to his last breath of air, the movie is lifted up to the level of pure pleasure. The big hair, the ludicrous mustache, and his very strange voice, what can I say? Probably Cage's best performance, or at least equally funny as his parts in Vampire Kiss. If you believe that Cage's finest hours are Wings of Desire and Con Air, please check this movie out. Then you'll see Hollywood's finest comedy actor, make magic with nothing but his own unique personality. If you bought this on videotape, there's one thing you must do after the first look through. Save time by cutting out all the scenes before and after Cage. And to all of you who borrowed this film to see Charles Sick Sheen, haha, losers. This is also the first time I've seen any of these reviews mention Wings of Desire.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
That's interesting, and they mention it in the same breath as Con Air.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I can
So
find that
those are
one.
the only two 10 out of 10 reviews, and one of those seems more like a 1 out of 10 review that they accidentally hit the 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
1 out of 10. God, this movie sucks. The only reason worth watching it is Nicolas Cage, the most overacting performance I have yet seen in a film ever. What was he on? Probably cocaine, but I
Jesus.
mean, who knows? There was a lot of that going around in this era. Um, the script and the direction are just terrible. Take the scene where James Coburn is explaining the con to his gang as they sit around a card table. The camera's in the middle of the table and rotates around, panning across the faces of the crew. I think it goes around twice. Any film that makes you overtly aware of its technique is amateurish at best. Was Nicolas Cage trying to ruin the film? Did he have it in for his director cousin? What else can explain this performance from the same guy that had previously starred in Moonstruck? He's ridiculous in this. As others have said, watch it only if you want to see how wretched a movie can be despite a superior cast. Charlie Sheen's brief appearance was the bright spot in this turkey. Wow. Christopher Coppola is officially the most talentless director and writer ever. And the guy who co-wrote it is Vallelunga, who was the co-writer on the Green Book piece of crap film that actually got an Oscar. Last one here. I can't believe that such a talented crew and cast could finish up with a movie so poor. Usually, with a poor film, my wife and I end up suffering after a quarter hour or so, long enough to make some sort of judgment with this film. I went on watching for another quarter of an hour because I thought it must be a parody on gangster dropout movies. But alas, it went from bad to worse. The acting was childlike. Even Nicolas Cage, who prior to this movie I had thought to be a reasonable actor, overplayed his part to the point where he would have been better playing a circus clown. As I watched this film, I thought of all the money spent telling the story that could have been used for more entertaining pursuits, such as filming a wet house brick drying in the sunshine.
Jeez.
Oh boy, that was rough. That was rough.
So real quick, Wings of Desire is not it's City of Angels.
Oh, okay. Is that like an alternate title or something?
So City of Angels is considered a loose remake of Wings of Desire, which is a German
Gotcha.
film from
That
what I
makes
can
sense.
tell. So I think that there might be some translation there.
Good to know. All right, well, that's pretty much Dreadfall or Deadfall, however you want to say it. Um,
Uh, yeah, I I do have one fun fact for the movie that is just really interesting to me, at least, and it shows you how little the studio believed in it. That sex scene, when this movie was originally shown in theaters, its initial run, there was an error in the print, and it was that scene was duplicated, and they just had the scene twice back to back, and didn't catch it until it was well into its theatrical run. So if you saw it in theaters during its initial run, you got to see that scene twice for some
Twice.
reason.
Wow, good for you.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
That's the mark of a good production cycle right there. But yeah, I guess that's the
And
movie.
you didn't even want to cover that Val Kilmer was initially cast to play Michael Bihn's role.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you want to go through enough of the yeah, there's a lot of trivia.
Yeah, I
Uh,
thought that was interesting because we're both Val Kilmer fans.
that's
It would have
true
made
though.
for a very different movie, I think.
I agree. He would have brought a sense of seriousness to the film. I think that's not there necessarily.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that Nick was originally going to be Joe, but he preferred the Eddie character because he thought he could bring more to it and have more fun with that, which
And boy, was he right.
I think it's true. Yeah, I think that's certainly true. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff in here. Um, I guess like the budget was originally more than double what it ended up being, but when Val Kilmer left, the production studio lost a lot of faith in it and slashed the budget for whatever reason.
Wow.
Um,
Well, we
but
better rate this thing.
yeah, yeah. Let's let's do it. So we have our Cajo meter. We rate our movies on overall quality and overall caginess, with 1 being low, 20 being high. I mean, from a quality standpoint, it's not a very good movie. It's
No, but it's
not like
also far from the worst we've watched.
right. It's not like terrible, but Ray said yes, it is. That's where she enters the room. I mean, it was bad. I'm thinking like an 8.
8 is exactly where I was at with it too. It's on the lower end of the average spectrum, I think, for Nicolas Cage movies. I would not be mad if I had to watch this film again. In fact, I probably will watch this film again at some point. But it was definitely on the, yeah, it wasn't nearly as bad as a lot of other movies we've watched.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was definitely not good. I think 8 is right where it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean it's not unwatchable and it's not boring either. There are a lot of these movies that have been in those two categories.
Yes, exactly.
Um and caginess. Now this one, I mean it's pretty high up there, I would think. It's not I'm not going to throw like a 20 or anything, but
But I think the only thing that really holds it back from being a 20 is the fact that he wasn't in the whole movie. He was only in, 30 to 40 minutes of it.
it's a
But I
good
think
point.
his performance is 100% a 20.
You think so? So what were
But
you is that what you're going to
but
give it?
but no, because we're rating the movie, not his performance.
Okay.
So I'm going to be at like an 18 with it. What other movies do I have at 18?
Well, if we're looking at caginess here, you put Moonstruck at 17.
It's definitely cagier than Moonstruck, but not by a lot. I mean,
Prisoners of the Ghostland at 16.
and
Vampire's
Vampire's
Kiss
Kiss was a 20, I'm
was our
assuming.
20. Yeah.
Yeah.
Matchstick Men was a 17. Oh, here we go. Sympathy for the Devil. We both gave that an 18.
It's cagier than Sympathy for the Devil, I think, don't you?
So maybe a 19.
19 is where I think it
I
needs to
think
be.
yeah, I think 19. All right. So we have an 8 on quality and a 19 on caginess. And so I had this thought about this movie because I feel like, okay, remember, put yourself in the Prisoners of the Ghostland mindset for a second.
Okay, I'm there.
If you strip Prisoners of the Ghostland from all of its unique stylization, it's kind of like this movie in that you have a lot of similar characters. The story is not really that great, but Nick is pretty like out there in it,
Cagey, yeah.
right? It's just that Prisoners of the Ghostland has such a unique style to it and vision to it
It
that,
definitely makes it stand out more than this movie
right.
does. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just kind of, I don't know. I was watching this and I was like, I just kind of kept making that weird connection for some reason,
Also, there were no Toyota Celicas in this movie.
which immediately, I mean, that
That's
knocks
a
it down a
minus a point
peg
immediately. Yeah.
immediately. All right. So before we go, though, we have to decide which movie or find out which movie joins our Wheel O Cage. So we spin our Wheel O Cage every time to pick our movie. And so joining the wheel is going to be another movie. As soon as I get this running here, I've got a little machine that picks it for us. So joining the wheel is going to be Rumblefish.
I have heard of that one before.
Yeah, Rumblefish joins the wheel. For those curious, Arsenal is already on the wheel.
Oh, okay, nice. So we could,
So
in theory, get
it's
that pretty soon.
it's possible. It's possible. We also have Face Off and Con Air on the wheel. Bangkok Dangerous and Renfield are on the wheel. So there's some interesting stuff on the wheel right now. So who knows
Yeah,
what'll be
I'm
next?
excited.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Um, I think that's it. Anything else, Ryan, for Deadfall?
Dude, I had so much I wanted to cover with you, and I think we covered pretty much all of it. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, you can find us at comingofcage.com or at Coming of Cage. You can subscribe on your podcast app of choice, or you can watch us on the Derrico Studios YouTube channel. I'm Derek. That's Ryan.
And we'll see you next time.